Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every Wednesday, hobbyists to full-time professionals from all over the world meet here to connect, inspire, and create and talk about photography. Our guest speakers share images, photography tips, and their stories of inspiration that help you improve your own photography skills. The schedule for upcoming presentations is on my website at lindanickell.com, as well as the links to previous sessions on YouTube. Tonight's guest is Valerie Hoffman. Valerie is a nature and landscape photographer based in Pennsylvania. She also hosts a variety of photography workshops, which focus on a large variety of subjects. And you can find more information on her website at valeriehoffmanphotography.com. If you're on Instagram, please look for her at Valerie Hoffman Photography. In tonight's presentation, planning for your next photography adventure. We all know planning for any trip can be chaotic and stressful, but planning for a photography adventure adds an extra level of angst and another bag to cart around. Valerie just returned from Norway, and I know that she has a few tips to help you prepare for your next photography trip. Welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Valerie.
Thank you, Linda, and thanks everyone for being here.
Yay.
I always look forward to it, whether I'm coerced to be here or not sometimes.
Okay, you know what? Stop it right there, because you're not coerced. You love it. You love doing these presentations.
In the chat, tell me if you can say no to Linda and get away with it. So
I double dog dare anybody to try it.
Yeah, killer. So we won't start right there, but so let me start by saying that this will be a very different kind of presentation for me, because normally I love to just show images and talk about them, and that's the thing, and usually there's a theme with a set topic. This one is a little more or a lot more information centric and text centric, so to keep it from being boring, I'll be slipping in as many images as possible, and most all of them I think are from the Norway trip. So that hopefully will keep you from getting bored. And second, I do not feel that I'm very well versed at creating presentations. So, like you have people like Sherry Hunt and all these people like do these killer things. So don't judge me on that. Like, just give me grace. I'm doing the best I can with what I have to work with. So let me start with kind of an overview. Linda said a little bit about that. When she asked me to work on this topic, I thought, well, I don't know what I would say. And then I thought about, holy cow, just this year alone, I've, driven to Michigan twice for more than a week, driven to Texas, that was 3 days each way. And that was, I don't even remember how long I was there. Done a bunch of trips. And then this trip to Norway, which we were there for 15 days. So I guess after all that, I do have a few things that I could hopefully share. So like Linda said, planning for any trip, I think, can be really chaotic and stressful. But I think planning for a photography trip is just like next level, because there's so much to maybe take or consider or whatever. So hopefully I can give you some good tips that we go through. And, when we were in Norway, we hit the transportation with planes and trains and buses and cabs and Uber. So, all that kind of factors in to some of the things that I want to share. So here we go. So just, in thinking, and I don't know, maybe you could even put it in the chat. Like, I don't know the experience with the people that are here. Have a lot of you taken a lot of photography trips? Are they little like shorter trips, for over a weekend? Do you go for big week long? I know like Trish has her little teardrop and takes off. So that'd be interesting to know what your level is of, planning and heading out. But, for a full-on photography adventure, from cameras and lenses and batteries and chargers, it's a lot. So, let's go through some stuff. So one of the things that I do And I put this as a starter because actually Norway was never on my bucket list except for this shot on the left. And whenever I see anybody, on a YouTube video or whatever that has, they're there, something that just made my heart sing. And I thought, if I could ever go there, I would be thrilled. Well, it turns out when I got invited to join a workshop that was already, scheduled to be in place, we were going to the Lofoten Islands, which is where this is. And it turns out that our first 3 nights were in these little red fishing cabins. So we were right there, and we were right on the bridge. And so this bottom shot is just a cell phone image. I mean, it was just stunning. So it was a pretty exciting trip for me. But the way I would start with planning is to ask a bunch of questions, and hopefully that these will make sense as we go. But first, you want to identify what is the main purpose of the trip for your packing. So a lot of you maybe get to shoot like Linda is right now when you're on a business trip. And so if it's a business trip, then you probably can't do a lot of photography. You probably will take minimum gear and just get out whenever you can. If it's a vacation, meaning a family vacation, well, most of you probably know the limits with that, and you got to slip in your photography, when it's not an inconvenience to everyone else. But a serious photography trip, that's what this is based on, and all the packing and everything. So when you have your trip and generically where you want to go, you want to ask yourself, well, when's the best time or season to go? And a lot of people have already asked me when's the best time to go to Norway, but just like the question, which lens should I use? The answer is it depends. It depends on what you're doing. And so if you want to see Northern Lights, and I think the timing is the same with Iceland, but if you want to see Northern Lights, that's really kind of mid-September through, I believe, March. If you want to have long days and stunning light where, the magic light is 4 hours long, then you want to go in the summer when it's like the land of the midnight sun. So you want to know what your purpose is for going somewhere, and that'll help you decide, when to go. And then obviously, what will the weather be like? So, if you don't like really cold temperatures, you want to be careful to not go in those months, or rainy seasons. And then, you want to think about your traveling. So are you traveling by car, plane, or train? Because obviously how you pack is different for each of those. And whether you're traveling alone or with others can make a difference as well. If you travel, like, you want to figure out, is there going to be a lot of hiking? Like Linda even asked me that earlier for, what we're going to do this weekend. But if you're going to be doing kind of some serious hiking, well, then you might need hiking boots, hiking poles, whatever. You want to make a note of that. And then this was kind of a big one for us. Will there be different shooting scenarios that, might require different types of gear? So we were 4 days on our own in Oslo, so just touring the city. And then we flew to the Lofoten Islands, and we're 8 days full on, photography workshop, then flew to Bergen. So again, you're in a city, and then back to Oslo. So I didn't want to be hiking around with this big heavy bag while I'm just being a tourist, more or less. So, I had to take that into consideration and have more than just a big bag when I'm carrying things around. That really was one of the bigger challenges as well. And you might ask, are you going to be shooting video? If you like to shoot video, like maybe you're even one of you guys have a YouTube channel in that. Well, if you want to be doing good video, then there'll be things you'll have to pack for that, versus maybe your phone or whatever. And then one of the questions that I always want to ask, because I love shooting stars, is, will I have opportunities to photograph the night sky? And part of that question is, are there dark sky areas? So I knew absolutely in the Lofoten Islands, there would be. So I had to add some of these things to my list, which we will go through. I think you would want to know whether it's safe where you're going and what are any risks and threats. So Norway is a pretty safe place. Like they have almost no crime. So I wasn't worried about walking around, and I spent a lot of time by myself. But what if you're going like on a wilderness trip and you know that there's can be bears or wild animals? You have to be prepared for that and take precautions, not just show up and, get eaten by a bear or something. So that's part of, your research and planning. And, how will you be getting around? You'll want to understand, like in this case, for overseas, what are your options? How can you get around at your destination? Where will you be staying? You'll want to make accommodations that are pretty centrally located or that make sense. And then going back to the other packing, like with your gear, are there things that would be better that you could purchase at your destination or rent at your destination rather than carry them around, such as a big lens, for say wildlife photography? So we'll talk about, lenses and things in a second. And then, last thing I want to know, there's an app for everything. So is there an app that can help me with this trip, with hiking or maps or whatever? And then just a couple more questions. So, this is a lot. So what about language? Are there any barriers? So I was told that everyone will speak English in Norway, and pretty much that was the case. But there's like very few things that were written in English. So I never knew what I was eating, where I was, what we were doing. I didn't know whether sign meant come in, go away, whatever. I mean, that was a big challenge. So having spent some time applying myself to the language might have helped. I mean, literally water closet is just about what I had for sure. And then how will I communicate with home and travel companions in the foreign country? So I didn't give that any thought and didn't realize that I couldn't just use my cell phone there. I know some of you are typing idiot in the chat. Be nice. But so as soon as we landed and AT&T realized, I'm now in a foreign country, they sent a text and said, hey, if you want to just use your phone like normal, say okay, and we'll charge you $10 a day. So, you want to figure out, are there other options? And then I wasn't staying close with the companions that I had for those 4 days. So how was I going to keep in touch with them if we all had to pay? So we were using a different app to try and keep in touch. You might want to know about the currencies. So the kroner, is that what it's called? I think. You didn't need to exchange money at all. They prefer that you use credit cards in Norway. So that's something that you would want to look at. When I was in Germany, somebody told us, no problem, everybody takes credit card. And then this was in 98. And almost nowhere we went to credit card at that point. And we were always without the means to be able to, to buy things. So that's a big deal. And if you're going to use your credit card, I didn't, are there fees? So I went and applied for a new credit card a week before this trip when I found out, hey, I'm getting fees all of a sudden for everything that I'm buying. So those are some things to maybe prepare for. And then the last thing I think is, are there any techniques that you want to learn before you go because you want to learn how to do, like, say, time lapse or star trails or focus stacking? So you want to make a note of that. And I highly suggest that you really apply yourself to doing that ahead of time, because you'll never do it when you're there. So time lapse was something that I knew that I wanted to do. And so my camera, I use only Olympus right now. And my camera will do, you can do intervalometer images where it just keeps shooting continuously, but you can check a little box and it will also create a time-lapse video for you. So we had the chance to view Northern Lights or photograph them on this night for over 2 hours. And I had a camera running, just continuously shooting. And then, this was one of the quick little time-lapse videos where it just put all those images together for me, which is pretty neat, because without taking video, then I could see, the motion. And this was another technique that maybe, say you have Olympus, a lot of people have Olympus and don't know how to use the live composite feature. And this is something that Trish and we were playing when I was there in Texas, and we were at the Riverwalk, and I wanted to, be able to keep, let all the boats come and go. These are all those colors are the lights on the boats. And so my camera in the live composite setting will allow for me not to blow out, like to do a long exposure where I can get all the trails. This was maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, a half hour. I have to double check, but without blowing out all the rest of the city scene. And it was just really cool. So those are the kind of things that you want to maybe apply yourself to learning ahead of time. So that was a lot, wasn't it? Have are there more things that I didn't even think about? Figuring all that out is huge. So let's take a deep breath, relax. Let's take a moment to look at a pretty picture. This was one of the many beautiful beaches there in Norway, and we were arriving in the rain at sunset, and the whole sky was just glowing this beautiful yellow orange. And here was this rainbow, and actually a second rainbow, double rainbow right there, which came out kind of faint, but that was a pretty neat part of the trip. So let's keep rolling. So now that we've asked all those questions and we've answered all those questions, let's start, getting ready for it. So I also, I make a list of key actions that, I'll need to take. So I answer my questions, I do my research as much as possible. And then I start creating lists. And I'm a firstborn type A, so I'm a list maker anyway. But I first create an actions list, which would be everything that I would need to do before the trip, or maybe even during it or after. So do you need a passport? Do you have a passport? You want to apply for something right away. So, you want to put all those kind of things in your actions list. And then I also create a list of important things to be aware of. Like right now, COVID policies, you need to know, do you need to test before you go? Do you need to test to come back into the country? Do you need a mask? What are airline restrictions? And that's big, knowing what you can pack in your carry-on, in your check bag. That's real important. And then if you're driving, so I know like Linda, you were in Norway and you actually drove, man, if you're driving like up through Norway and it's all mountains and there's road closures and you don't know about them, that could put you 3 to 8 hours out of the way. So those are some really important things that you want to research and make a note of. Okay. So again, research is the difference between a great experience and a complete disaster. So let's talk about researching the destination. Here's some suggestions. Maybe you even know more and you could throw those in the chat for me. But I subscribe to Only in Your State blogs. I subscribe for Utah because there's just a lot of neat places there. I subscribe for Pennsylvania. And then I also started for Texas when I was coming out. And that's a lot of good blogs that can give you, help you find some neat places. Obviously, you can Google your destination, but be real specific. Like say you're going to Norway, don't just say cool places to shoot in Norway, but say in the Lofoten Islands or in Oslo or wherever specifically you're going. And then when you're in Google, like you can laugh, but it was a lot of years that I used Google before I realized that you could click on, that there were images that you could click on. So I'll click on images a ton and just look and like, oh, that's my bucket list shot. I want to see that, and kind of save those things. I spent a lot of time on YouTube watching videos in Norway, and what's his name? Rick Steves is a big travel guy. So he would be, some of his videos and books would be a big help. And then on Instagram, you could just use different hashtags. I'm sure Linda could say that better than me, but maybe hashtags for Norway or hashtags for the Lofoten Islands or whatever, and search that way. And then Facebook groups can be a big help. Like you could maybe join a group at the destination you're going and get to meet some people and ask them some questions. Is it safe? Where can I go? Local camera clubs would be the same. Meetup groups would be the same. That you can maybe contact people and maybe find a photo buddy that you could, actually, especially if you're going alone, like have somebody to do something with there if you feel comfortable that that's a safe thing. So, and then, one of the things you could also do is do an internet search for photography workshops in that area and maybe see where other pros go or where they take people and what they shoot. So those are some key things that might help you. So now let's pause for another pretty picture. Linda's like, that's a lot of text. And I'm like, don't worry, there's pictures in there too. But this was on our like day one of the beautiful little stream waterfalls that we saw. So let me move on. So now that you have all that stuff going around in your head, how do you keep it all organized? For me, I use Evernote. You can use that on 2 devices for free. And I use that to create my lists. I use it to store any information about a place, even my little lists of where to go when I'm in Oslo, Bergen, whatever. So I use OneNote that has everything all together in one place. And then I use Google Maps extensively. When I find some place that at some point in the future, no matter where it is that I would like to visit, I click the little save button, and I'll show you a picture. So there's a little symbol to bookmark it, and I do that. And even keep that more organized, I have a bunch of categories like waterfalls, abandoned, night skies, whatever. And so I just keep, because I have over 1,000 saved places, just put them in a nice category. So at some point I say, well, is there any abandoned around here? And I might find something that I've seen and saved. And I don't know, put in the chat, do you guys do that? Do you use Google Maps that way? And one of the neat things is you can also make special notes. So, they're closed here, or, whatever. Or a lot of people like Columbia River Gorge, cars get broken into, you might want to make special notes about things. So here's just a screenshot. And I said, and if we have time, I'll go on and show you how I use it. I can hook my phone up and do that. But I just have a gazillion little stars, and that's the saved places. And then you could click on any one of those stars at any point and see what that is and get information about it. So, a couple of us are planning a 3-day weekend, and, as we're going to go to this Bedford area, I will just be looking at anything that looks, interesting. I'll save it. And then eventually we'll put it together in hopefully a coherent path where we, have a bunch of cool things to see as we travel. So there. So any questions so far, Miss Linda, or keep rolling?
I do keep rolling. There are a couple of questions, but they're pretty general, so I can save them.
Okay. So let's get our checklist going now. So, they help ensure that you don't miss anything. And it's just satisfactory to be able to check them. So I don't just do bullet points or numbers. Like, I actually want checklists so that I can know that I did it. So again, my lists are my action items, my important info, camera gear, clothing, personal items such as laptop, hard drive, all the cords and pieces and parts, maybe medications or first aid, and then, books, maps, any other things. And obviously, toiletries too. I didn't, kind of write that down there. So you can make a list of whatever it is that, whatever category you want, but you just want to make sure that you don't miss anything. So my action items, like we talked about, might include getting your passport. It might include renting or borrowing, a lens or gear. It might include, for me now, I see that I have a big thing of dust on my sensor, wherever that came from. So maybe clean your sensor, maybe buy a new camera bag, I'm sure, new hiking pants, whatever. Then it also might include things that you want to include, like to take care of for your family while you're away, meals, whatever. One of the key things is make sure that everything is charged, make sure you have all your memory cards clear, so you're just set up and ready to go. We talked about, maybe you'll want to pay attention to any COVID restrictions or whatever. Knowing the airline restrictions was huge. So a key thing is lithium batteries. Like, they can't be in your checked bag. They have to be in your carry-on. So that adds like a bunch more stuff, that's weighted on your back that maybe you didn't normally want. It's important to know the luggage size and weight limits, where to meet others, their emergency numbers, etc. So throwing in a picture here, this was a beautiful, like, catching it right before sunset. The mountain was aglow, and this is a reflection, so there's a lake right in front there. So there was just this gorgeous mirrored reflection. So there, just we'll pause. And I can't actually tell you where I don't think anything is the names of anything. I just didn't, there weren't signs. We would just stop every 5 minutes and photograph something. So hopefully Jonathan, our workshop leader, will be sending us a list, and I'll be able to have that for future posts. So we go, let's get packing. So most important thing is not to overpack, try to only pack absolute essentials. Take what you need, nothing extra. So for me, a great thing was to use packing cubes. And I went out and bought a bunch of large Ziploc bags, or you can use the ones that are made for packing your clothing, so that I could get out the air, pack them down tighter. So it was pretty organized. And it was also helpful then, because I decided to weigh things as I went, because I knew I was going to be pushing the limit with 50 pounds. And I started right off by weighing my suitcase, and that was 11.5 pounds. So you're already like hosed before you begin. So then I would weigh my boots and my tripods and clothing, and oh my goodness, I have 58 pounds. Well, now I got to get rid of my peanut butter and whatever else I was taking. So I think that's helpful before you shove it all in and then find out you're way overweight. So, and then the other important thing is, are you physically able to handle it? So the suitcase I initially was packing at 50 pounds, and as large as it was, there was no way I was getting it up into trains or anything. And so the day before my trip, and this was actually the original one, but the day before my trip, I went suitcase shopping and came home with one that was 7 pounds. And that then allowed me to have a second tripod and some other things. But here's kind of an example, with the cubes and everything, it's pretty organized. And I was able to keep separate things, like all my hiking clothing separate, that were the workshop things, and bury them on the bottom, and just have my touristy things more on the top. So maybe that would be helpful. But now here, the camera gear, photographers, this is the most important thing. So when you make your list, I would make sure, even though I'm bunching a couple things together on a line, I would have a separate line item for every single thing. So I took two camera bodies. For one, I knew I wanted to do two separate things, like with night photography, but absolutely, what if you drop one? What if something breaks? Almost everyone on our trip dropped something, and it was almost a disaster. And one person on like the third day in, before the workshop, broke her lens that she would have been using for most everything. And so that's a big deal, to kind of have a backup besides your phone. So I'd list the OM1 and then my second camera, and then the batteries for the first camera, batteries for camera number 2, chargers, so you can make sure to check every single item. And then I don't know if you guys do it, but whenever I get something new, I go right on Amazon and I find a USB charger that will charge my batteries. I'll usually pick one that comes with batteries as well. They generally don't last as long, but they're more extras. And these might run around 50 some dollars. But then I have this USB charger that all throughout the day, I could be charging batteries with a power bank if they're going down. And so then obviously a power bank to charge my phone and batteries, whatever else. I chose to have a memory card for almost every single day, so that I would never have to format my card while I was on the trip, so that I would have one more backup for my images, and to play it safe. And if you just take one card, you could say, well, I have a 256 gig or something. What happens if something happens to that one card? So you might want to consider that for your next trip, like maybe some smaller cards. And then I had a nice protective case. I knew it was going to be rainy, so I had a waterproof case to keep everything in. So here's a little example. And, I say in a minute that I take a portable hard drive. I take a LaCie drive. They're a little more rugged, but this, will be in my carry-on bag. Here's my card. I took a GoPro, so there were some little cards in there. And then this is what my camera bag looked like with everything in, and me not knowing what to do with said GoPro. It's floating on top there. So, and if anybody's interested, this is the f-stop cashmere bag. All right. So, consider your two different cameras. Now, what about your lenses? Well, I think if you have a wide angle, a mid-range zoom, and then maybe a telephoto, like that is everything that you might need. I would suggest that you only take a big heavy lens at 70-200. It's something up to 500 or 600. If you know that you're absolutely going to use it. So if you're a birder and it's a bird trip, well, you got to take that lens. You got to take the big one and figure out how you're schlepping it around. For me, birds, no. So I don't have anything big. I have a smaller lens that would be a 600 mm magnification on Olympus, but it's tiny and light. So you want to give some thought to that. I also wanted, on top of the first three, a fast wide angle lens that would go down to 2.8 or faster for night skies and the northern lights. And then I also took a fisheye lens so that I would have two fast lenses on each camera. And the fisheye is great for, if any of you have seen when I did the architecture, I love to use that sometimes inside and in old churches and things. So it's great for low light and the night skies. I took my nifty 50, which is good for lower light. And if any of you are into street photography, that's kind of a great lens to use. But I don't think I ever ended up using it. And I also took my small macro because on the Olympus, it is just a tiny little bugger, but I did not use that at all either. Polarizer, circular polarizer. I have one on every lens. I always have one on. If it's nature, I'm using a polarizer unless it's not doing anything or if I need to not cut down light. I use a lens hood on every lens, so I make sure, and again, that would be separate items, but they're always on my lenses. That will protect the lens if you bump it. It, keeps the rain off the front, and then also obviously the lens flare. I took a set of ND filters because I knew I wanted to do long exposures with water. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried it. You get really annoyed when you have all these people in the church or whatever. If you use a long ND filter and maybe do a minute-long exposure or longer, most people will move out of the scene and you could end up having no people when there were really hundreds, no people in your image. So you might want to, if you don't own ND filters, consider that. I knew it was going to be a rainy area, so I took a ton of lens cloths. I did take two tripods because I was afraid, what if one broke? What would happen? I knew I'd be using it 90% of the time. And then I knew I wanted to run two cameras at night. So that was part of my big packing issues, is trying to fit them in. And then you probably should take a cable release, or you could use a self timer. So here's some examples. This image on the left, I did use a 6-stop neutral density filter so that I could slow the water so it would be nice and smooth. And I like that look a little better than kind of choppy, wavy water. And I know you probably don't see a difference in the two images on the right, but if you look closely at this, the roof of this red barn in the middle, it's kind of shiny, whereas the bottom one, it's not. And so that's one of the primary reasons to use a polarizer. It just really will get rid of reflections on things and saturate your colors more. So those are some examples of why I use the filters that I use. Here's another one, excuse me, in Bergen with the ND filter. So this was a 15-second, I believe it was, exposure to smooth out all the water in the harbor there. And it would have been like smooth as glass and had great reflections had two boats not come through and kind of stirred it up. So those are some neat things that you can do with those filters. And talking about lenses, so I didn't go, it wasn't really a wildlife trip, but having that 75-300 then enabled me to be able to capture this moose that was posing for us on the side of the road as we were heading back to the airport. So you probably do want to have a big lens if you're going out in nature, or at least that reach with your zoom. So there's some of the things. And then a super wide angle lens. I could not have gotten these neat rocks in the foreground in the image on the left, or even gotten as close into the water without having a super wide angle lens. So I love super wide angles for landscape photography. Then just a couple other things, a hurricane blower brush if you get dust on the sensor or anywhere else, maybe Q-tips to clean the outside. One piece of equipment that I didn't have, and I sure wish I did, was a drone. I don't know if any of you guys have a drone but a couple of the people on the workshop did, and the images from above were absolutely stunning. So that is high on my action items list for any next big trip, to have one. So if you are going to take a drone, then you want batteries, your battery charger, obviously your controller, propellers, everything. And then you really need to know your drone regulations, because the fines are pretty huge if you're flying where you don't belong. It's important to know, is it a rainy season? Again, I said that. So if there is a chance of rain, you would want some kind of protection for your camera, because you're not going to sit in your hotel room if it rains. You're there, you paid, you got to get out in it. And you can get some amazing images when you're out in the rain, even like that rainbow shot. So I had a nice little light rain cover for the camera. And then I also had a rain cover for the camera bag. I took a bunch of microfiber towels so I could dry everything off as I went. I always have a headlamp in my bag and or a small flashlight. And you should make sure that, you probably don't need both, but that one or the other has, a red lamp if you're going to be doing any night photography. So it doesn't, using a flashlight doesn't wreck your night vision. I did take a light pollution filter for stars. I never used it. And I did take a lens warmer, which will keep the lens from fogging up when shooting stars. I never needed that either. But here's, example, here's this night skies filter, headlamp. Here's what some of those chargers look like if none of you have ever bought one. Just, I'd want one that would charge 2 batteries, and then some of the ND filters. Just kind of threw those in there. And then one of the things that I deem generally lesser important, but was a huge asset on the trip, was the iPhone. So I don't like the quality mostly of cell phone pictures now, as the cameras, or as the phones are newer, and even the 11 Pro or Plus or whatever and on up, take some pretty amazing images. But I found it invaluable for a variety of reasons. For one, just to be able to do quick grabs and not get a camera out or in the rain or whatever. But you have that quick image that you could share and show people where you were if you wanted to. But the real bonus was that it was, if you have location tracking on in your phone, then as you're taking these pictures, like I can look in photos, because I'm all Apple, so they automatically will go in there, and I can see the name of the town, which I had no idea as we were traveling. So I love that. So now I'd go back into photos and just look where it said, so, Svelvard or whatever, and I can now keyword that, because I love to keyword my images. A lot of you might have in your camera the GPS built right in, but that does tend to drain your batteries a lot. And so, you don't want to be faffing around with turning it on and off. So I just wouldn't do that. And I just took a picture everywhere we stopped with my cell phone. And honestly, the built-in HDR modes in the iPhone, or, maybe in your Google Pixel or whatever, they can do a really great job in some really bad light. So we got some pretty nice images with our phones, and the video is fantastic. So I did a lot of video. I used my GoPro once, and then that was it. I used the iPhone for all the other videos that I shot. And this shot here, this is from the iPhone. And it just balanced everything. Like I probably would have made an HDR shot and bracketed this, but it just did beautiful. Now, can I make a wall mural? Probably not, but it turned out great. And this is a cell phone shot of the Northern Lights. And I just thought, let's see what happens. And literally I was able to capture that. And that was pretty stunning to me. This is a pretty cool image. And then these shots at that same beach that you saw the rainbow of, well, it was raining when we were trying to shoot, and it was just everybody was around these neat little patterns in the sand, and it just was awkward. And I just used my cell phone to do a bunch of these patterns, because I could get really low easily and the tripod wasn't in the way, and they turned out great. So, don't write off the cell phone. Make sure that that's always charged and, ready to go. All right. Why did we just get stuck? Okay. So, maybe you won't take a laptop. Maybe some of you just take like an iPad or something to look at your images. But I definitely had a laptop, so you want to make sure you have your power cord with that, the portable hard drive with its cord. My laptop, the card reader no longer works, so I need to also pack one of those. I need to make sure to get a plug for the foreign country, but you didn't actually need in Norway, and I don't think anywhere in Europe, you don't need a power inverter for your phone or your laptop. You just need to be able to plug things in. Carry a watch charger, you needed that, and cords for all your other devices or USB blocks so that you could charge everything at night. And then just real quick, I'm not going to tell you what to pack for clothing, but when you're doing a photo workshop, or you're going for photography, man, you have to be able to wear things multiple times. And normally I would overpack and take a different shirt for every day and, different pair of shorts or whatever. But when I talked to everybody else that I was going with, they're like 2 pair of hiking pants, 3 shirts, and that's it. And I'm like, 3 shirts for 15 days. Oh, but if you buy the hiking clothing, the wick away, it doesn't stink, and you can wash them out in the sink at night and it dries really quickly. So hiking clothing is your best friend. I mean, you could take care of that. Maybe moisture wicking socks as well. I mostly wear compression socks because I generally, when I travel, have trouble with leg swelling. So that's something else to keep in mind. 1 pair of jeans is all I took. I wore it on the plane and then just for touring around downtown. And then obviously something to sleep in, slippers, undies, whatever. And most of the group was taking like 3 pair of underwear and we're going to wash them out at night. And I'm like, I am not doing laundry every night when I come in. And how much space does underwear really take? So I took the whole enchilada for that. But here's where it gets a little challenging. So hiking boots. So one of the good tricks that I pulled before the trip was the day before the trip, when I was out looking for lighter luggage, I fell and I sprained my ankle pretty bad, and it was swollen and it needed to be wrapped and it needed to be iced. And so I could wear like loose sneakers, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to even wear my boots. I didn't know whether the high tops or low tops would be better. And so I just took both. And, that way, in case one gets wet, which inevitably was going to happen, even though they're waterproof, they're not. So then I had 2 pairs to be able to rotate back and forth. Now, a lot of people just wore theirs on the plane because then you have more room in your suitcase. But I did that on the way to Africa and didn't move around a lot. And my legs swelled up so bad that I almost couldn't wear my clothing for the 8 days that I was there. So these are just little tips. Maybe you already know it, but if you're going to wear your boots on a plane, I would make sure that you take them off while you're sitting and keep that loose, because that can be a real health problem too with blood clots. But I wore comfortable walking shoes for everything. I had a very heavy rain jacket that was a good rain jacket, and Gore-Tex windproof. Rain pants that I could pull on over top of the hiking pants, because even if your hiking pants dry quick, you don't want to be soaked all day. And then I read this on a blog that you stuff newspaper in wet boots and that helps to dry them. So I took some newspaper along. Had umbrella and colder temps. I took everything, including hand warmers and things, so I could stay warm. And then this will be it in a minute. Your vitamins, toiletries. One of the things, so like in Norway, they don't separate shampoo and hand soap. It's like all one thing. And in one of our hotels, it was literally the foaming hand soap that we were washing our hair with, which was kind of a mess. So you might want to research, don't pack the stuff if it's at the hotel, but do pack it if it's not. Bug spray, whatever. So I need a sip. Another pretty, this was like one of the first images that we shot after we started the workshop. It was beautiful. How we doing, Linda? Good?
Doing good.
All right. So just some travel notes now. So if you are traveling by far, traveling by car, that's by far the easiest. And that's why I drove 3 days to Texas instead of flying, because I just did not want to have to try and figure out how to do everything that I just went through. So I just threw it all in the car, have a full tank of gas, have your maps, have your emergency kit. I have a really cool little battery that has jumper cables. And so if my battery dies, I can just go right there, plug it in, jump it without needing another car. So I think that's a huge asset. And I also carry a thing called an air dragon, which is can inflate your tire. And I actually got a flat tire on my way home. And I came out one morning at the hotel and it was flat, and that was able to get me to where I needed to go to get it repaired. Um, Obviously, a cooler full of drinks and food. You never know where you're going to find food. If you're hypoglycemic like me and you'll get hangry and everything, you need to make sure you have stuff and not depending on finding it. And that'll save you time and money. And obviously, fillable water bottles. So car travel, this was the back of the van for the workshop with everybody's luggage and camera bags and tripods and things flying all over, which was pretty funny that we could make it all fit. Now, if you're traveling by plane, just some things to remember. Obviously, make sure you have your ID and passport, tickets, boarding pass. Noise canceling headphones are the bomb. You don't need $150 ones. I got like a $39 pair that were great. The neck pillow, eye mask, all that good stuff. And definitely snacks and medicine, because even if they're giving you a meal, it's not so much. So, the key, especially with not being in your car now, is packing light. And so these were my carry-ons. And so my suitcase was 49 pounds and my camera bag was 23. And that backpack that had all my batteries and my laptop and stuff was like 26 or 7. So at any point I was schlepping 100 pounds, and it was draining. Like when we got to the city and we had to be walking around carrying all the stuff, it was pretty awful. I don't know how I would have done it any lighter, but yeah, here it is. So make sure you know those limits and make sure that you pack only what you can handle. So here's just a funny shot with all of us. We needed 3 carts for 4 people. These were the ones that I was specifically with before the workshop. Researching how to get where to go when you're there, can always help. We had no idea. So we stood staring at things for a really long time, but this was kind of the gear that we all had. Apps can be very helpful. And I used quite a few. So I booked everything through Expedia. They had the best prices on my hotels and the flight and everything. And it was wonderful because then all the information was together. Now, some of you that fly all the time, like Linda, you're like rolling your eyes, like, no kidding. But it's been a while since I flew. And so this was just, a big help. And then, we talked about Google just for your research, Google Maps. Google Earth, a lot of people use that. You can even see like at different times of day where the shadows will fall. That can help for hiking or mountain climbing or whatever. I wasn't climbing any mountains. But there's probably an app for any destination you're going, at least for maybe the country. But there was an app for Oslo, which was very helpful. And it, gave you tips on how to get around. And then All Trails is very helpful if you're just going on a hiking trip, that, you can clock your movement and see trails and download them. Excuse me. And then weather apps, that's just a big deal for photography. You want to be able to see cloud cover and dew points. So knowing if there'll be maybe mist or fog in the morning. Weather apps can be very unreliable, but Clear Outside is one that seems to be pretty reliable. Definitely for cloud cover and rain. If you're going to have low clouds, you may not be able to see, have a good sunrise or sunset. But if you have medium or higher clouds, so that's something that I would look for. Then you might have a good chance at, a good sunrise or sunset. If you're going to be by the ocean, I think you definitely need your tide charts to know whether when the tide's coming in or going out. That'll make a huge difference for your pictures, but it can also save your life from not being caught when tides come in. Photo pills I use all the time. Finding the sunrise, sunset, the moonrise, the moonset times, the stages of the moon, the Milky Way core when that rises and sets, and even the augmented reality that's in there, which is where you can turn it on live and see where your Milky Way might line up. And then I also use a light pollution map and an aurora forecast map. And so if you want to know about aurora, they use a KP scale, and I think it's like 1 through 7. I don't know if there's anything higher than 7, but generally, if you have a 2 or a 3, there's a good chance you'll see northern lights. When you see them really dancing with your naked eyes, that's generally higher than a KP3. But on this night, it was a KP3 and we could see it. Maybe it even got higher over the night, but we could visually see them well with our eyes. I've been out shooting northern lights in northern Michigan where we were all lined up. It was supposed to be a KP3 and nobody could see anything. And we just, by chance, my buddy took a picture and the northern lights were active, but you couldn't see it. So sometimes your camera, can pick it up much better, or may even see it when your eyes don't. So be aware of that KP index. And if anybody was going to ask, so a good starting point for northern lights is ISO 3200. You want a fast lens, so I used my 12 to 42.8, and most of them were 5 to 8 second exposures. If you go longer, it can just be a big mush and not see the nice streaks. So there's your aurora tip. And this was like at 8 seconds. And this is another one where that other shot looked like a hand. This was all around the same time. These were 5 seconds.
Let me ask a real quick question.
Sure.
Interrupt. I think Jamie's question is relating to the northern lights. And if I'm wrong, Jamie, correct me. But she wants to know, could you hear them?
No, I didn't know that you could hear them.
I didn't think so, but I didn't know either.
I mean, maybe you could hear like it because it's a magnetic, kind of, but not that. All I heard was us screaming.
Okay.
In excitement. So maybe you could, and we were just too loud.
Jamie came back and said, supposedly you can at times. So that was just curious.
Okay. Well, now that's another bucket list thing to be able to hear the northern lights sometimes. So I guess we won't do that in Texas though, right? We'll have to go north. So I just had a couple final things that I suggested as actions before leaving. Insurance is a yes or no thing, but I definitely got travel insurance with COVID and everything else. And our airline, SAS, Scandinavian Airline, actually filed for bankruptcy like 4 months before our trip. And so we didn't know how that was going to play out. It turned out to be fine. We left on September 9th and everything was fine from US to Norway. But insurance, I think, in this kind of scenario is a good idea. And I paid the extra so that I had full medical coverage while I was away as well. I think you need to make sure that your personal camera gear and laptop are insured as well, because you just don't know. And then here's some other suggestions that maybe you don't know or do. I create a visual record of every piece of equipment that I'm taking. So like you saw my photograph of my camera bag. So that was a record, but then I photographed every single piece, and there's a date stamp on there for insurance that says, yes, I had it. Now it's gone, whatever. So that covers you in case of loss or theft or damage. And then, like I said, about photographing the camera bag, doing everything inside. And I would just use the cell phone for simplicity. But then I also make a copy of every one of the important documents that I'll be taking. So I just lay on my printer, my passport, my driver's license, my credit cards, anything I'm going to travel with. And I photograph or make a copy of the front and back so that, sometimes you don't know what's in your wallet. Well, what happens if your wallet goes missing? Do you remember the credit card you had or whatever? So I have a copy with me. And then I also leave a copy at home so that if I needed somebody's help with something, I would have that. And then the same thing, I know your app has your boarding pass and all that, but a lot of times you can't find them or something doesn't work. So I have printed out copies of everything as well, just to be sure. And then take the time to plan your days as best as possible so that you're able to do everything that was on your list that you created to be able to do. And then just some final thoughts. Look at that, Linda. Look at that timing. Some final thoughts would be, get a great picture of yourself at stunning locations, not the silly, in your face, up your nose, blurry kind of selfie, but the well thought out, well composed, camera on a tripod kind that you will cherish forever. And then print some of those pictures and put them proudly on your wall or make a book. So here's what not to do. Like, you're not even looking in the lens. It's a stupid shot. My hat looks like it's huge. Don't do that. Don't do this. Okay, now I'm centered and I'm looking at the lens, but it's still not a nice picture. But maybe have someone else take it or put your camera on the tripod. Now, this is an image that I would put on my wall and just remember the memories, forever. And these are funny shots, but like, these are cool. Like me and this troll, like I had some guy, I said, will you please take my picture so I don't look like an idiot? And I look like the Michelin woman in almost all the pictures because it was kind of cold there, and everything that I took I wore, and so it is what it is, and it's a funny memory. So but those are nicer pictures on the top of a mountain looking out with your troll, whatever. And kind of final thoughts, for me, I've been financially challenged since I lost my full-time job with Ritz in 2009. And so I have a lot of trips that I dream of and, don't get to take. And so for those of you that still can only dream of taking, that kind of trip of a lifetime, or you have multiple, trips that you still want to take, find consolation in reminding yourself that great images can always be found close to home too. And, things will work out eventually that you should be able to, get somewhere. But, while you're home and while you're waiting and while you're dreaming, get out as often as you can and shoot. Learn your gear, gain a greater understanding of the fundamentals, take lessons with somebody or whatever, so that when your moment comes, you're ready and your pictures are excellent and not, oh crap, they were, bad. And for me, as I kept dreaming and dreaming, I started a travel fund. And every time I get paid, I put money away into a travel fund so that is building up, so that when the time comes to be able to go somewhere, I can do that. So that's it. So thank you guys a ton.
So it's fine.
Like, seriously, you want me?
Yeah, take it down. That way we can see your face.
Okay, and then I can see your face.
No. Okay, so a couple of questions in here that I think you've already hit on and answered, but the question was, I think it was from Jamie. I may be wrong. When you drive, you tend to take everything, and people, she does, because I was in her vehicle and it took her forever to clear off a seat for me to sit on.
Everything is actually usually always in my car because I don't have a house at the moment. I have 2 rooms. So.
Okay, so you did cover the airplane and the car versus thing.
Hey, can I add something that I didn't cover?
Sure.
So camping is never an option for me. I don't camp. That's why you didn't hear anything. I figure if you're a camper, you know that you need your tent and your sleeping pad and all that stuff. But like when I come in from a long day of hiking, I want to plug everything in and go take a hot shower and be in a comfortable bed and not worry that a bear is going to eat my food or eat me in the middle of the night. So if you're a camper, more power to you, but that's not a presentation I'll ever be giving, probably.
Yeah, and
Okay.
heaven forbid a bear takes her food. People, I have seen
That's right. Heaven
is the
forbid, or some
definition
silly
of
friend.
hangry. She's that reason that the Snicker bar commercial, she's that person. Okay, let's talk about portable backup hard drives. The question
Okay.
is, do you back up your photos daily?
Absolutely. Every single night, which is another reason why I get almost no sleep. And Linda's a witness. I want to see them. Like, I'm excited from the day. I love to see my images come to life. So when I get to a hotel, the very first thing I do is I hook it up so that my images are importing into Lightroom onto my portable hard drive. And as that process is happening, then I'm plugging in all my batteries and then maybe, getting dressed for bed or shower, whatever. But always, and that's my routine here at home too. I load my images without fail. The only time was coming back from DC. I just couldn't even, like, I went straight to bed. I just went straight to bed. So
I wore her out. Let's talk about insurance. I think Mika had that question of, do you have any recommendations on who to use and limits? And if you want to throw out a company, go ahead and do that.
let me
Who
see
do,
if I
who do
have it.
you use? And then I'll throw out who I
Well,
use.
this was the first time that I ever did. I know I asked Christy who she was using because she traveled right before me. And Mika, I could get that for, I honestly don't know. Like, I just researched it, best place to use travel insurance. I read a couple blogs, and when I went on the websites, I read the reviews. And if a lot of ones that sort of said they were good, they had terrible customer service was the review. And I don't want any part of that, because if I'm with a broken leg somewhere or something, I need somebody to answer right away and help me. So I really just did reviews, but I can somehow share that somewhere.
Okay.
I don't see it sitting right here in my pile.
Okay. I'll give a plug. I have a policy on my gear with State Farm, and it's one of those no questions asked. I give them a list of all the equipment. I give them a copy of the receipt, and I give them if it's not on the receipt, they'll ask for a serial number. I dropped a lens in a stock tank earlier this year, and it
You
went
dropped the what?
a lens.
Oh, you dropped. Okay.
Yeah, I dropped a lens, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't get it back. So I called my agent. Actually, I sent an email and said, hey, drop something. This is what it is. And there was no what happened. There was no report to be filled out. It was literally a no questions asked. They sent me a check for the amount of the invoice that I had submitted to them when I filled out my application or filled out my inventory. I was really expecting some back and forth and can I don't know. I was expecting like a police report or something I was gonna have to fill out. And I was very, very impressed with that. And I don't pay that much. I probably pay like $200 a year for, I think it's $8,000 worth of stuff that I have insured. I don't put everything on there because like if it's an old lens or something I know I'm going to replace anyway, I don't bother. But I recently added my new laptop to it. And so I try to keep that list kind of current and clean, because if I lose my big camera or my favorite camera, I'm going to want to replace that as soon as I can. So that's
If I can clarify that too. So I had two different insurances going. So Treywick, and I'm about to put it in the chat, was my travel insurance company. And then I have gear insurance through Lockton International, I think they are, and they're through PPA, a discounted rate through PPA. So part of the reason I'm even a member with PPA is they give you $5,000 worth of gear insurance included, and you get discounts on this other insurance. So, I have two different things.
okay.
Yeah.
Egidio wants to know, do you use or recommend any satellite SOS subscription like InReach, or I'm not sure what else is out there, in case you're in the remote areas and have no phone signal?
I absolutely do. I know, a lot of people that I follow on YouTube. So I'm never out in a remote area by myself because I just wouldn't be. But I bought a long time ago on a sale. It was called Spot. And you can activate those. That's very old now, but there are lots of them where you're able to send an emergency signal and everything, because a lot of those places your phone would never work or anything. So yes, I absolutely do. For those of you guys that do the serious hiking, I absolutely would.
Yeah. Mika's question in here is about, she's concerned and she worries when she leaves some of her gear in a hotel room. What are your tips or tricks that you employ?
Well, I always do, like you said, Linda, I don't have room service ever. And when I have to leave something just in case, I might hide it in the bottom of a laundry bag and put dirty underwear on top. Like I try and hide it, or maybe under a bed or whatever. Because usually it might be a quick grab or something. So I've never, I don't think, had anything taken from a hotel, but I don't get room service, cleaning service at all. If I need something, I'll just ask for it so I can keep everything spread out and not worry about it. Because the laptop doesn't leave the hotel ever, or the hard drives.
Yeah, that's probably why I got a wellness check, because I don't let people in the room. Um, I can't make a huge recommendation, but one of the things that I do when I'm at a hotel, I do the do not disturb sign on the door almost all the time, except when I do need that occasional, I need new towels and I need new, sheets. So one of the things I do is I pick the bottom drawer of a dresser, and I throw my laptop and my gear in there, because I figure if someone's going to go through my room, they're going to hit the first couple of drawers, and then they're in a hurry to get out. So I hope that they don't get to that third drawer.
I thought of something that I did do, like one time. So I usually will ask for 2 queen beds if I have an option over a king, so that I have a separate bed to spread out on. And what I did was, hid a bunch of things under the covers under my suitcase on the second bed, and that wasn't very obvious at all. So that's something you could try. In the pillows, whatever. So
Another thing, and I think Egidio does this, I do this as well. One of the things I do is I photograph my license, my passport, my vaccine cards, anything that I need that I carry in my purse. I photograph those, I throw them into a PDF or whatever, and I put them on my Google Drive. I create a folder. So in the event that everything gets stolen, I'm going to be able to find somebody with a phone or a computer that are going to be kind enough to let me get to Google, and I can retrieve my stuff. So that's just something I noticed that Egidio does, and that's something I do all the time.
I don't think Linda was listening to all my presentation.
Well, I wasn't, but I want you to make sure that has saved me in spots. So let me just read.
Yeah, thankfully, I've never had to use it, but it's a good idea to do it just right now, because what if your wallet got stolen? Like I have all my things in there. I wouldn't, or do you know the numbers and everything else? Like that's just a good thing to have.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So, all right. That is all I saw in the chat. Valerie, are you ready to say goodbye to the nice people?
I am, but I don't want to see them all go. We can chat.
Well,
after
they don't have to. They don't have to go when
Yeah.
we shut down. If they would like to stay, we have some bonus photos if you want to stay.
There you go.
I know, right?
All right. So then I will say thank you, everybody that came. I hope, that was very different for me. I tried to keep it unboring, but it's a lot of stuff, like, planning for a travel trip. That's a lot of stuff. And so hopefully there were some tips in there for you guys. And hopefully you put some other tips in the chat that, things that I missed. And Christy, I said, Christy, tell me what I missed, because we haven't gotten to talk much since she came back from her trip.
Yeah, she was in Iceland. Yeah. Yep.
See, no, I wasn't going to say it just in case, but yeah. And she did very different. Yeah.
If you have secrets, don't tell me, because I'll tell everybody else. That's not true. I'm at Vault. All right, Valerie, this was fun. It's good to see you. And, we can still tolerate and put up with each other. So.
In short sprints.
Get
no, I love you, Linda.
I know you do. I know you do. The people in the room probably don't.
No, I think they know. Yeah, no, I appreciate you very much. And I appreciate this opportunity to be able to do this. So it's been fun.
All right. You guys can connect with Valerie through her website, ValerieHoffmanPhotography.com. She puts out a newsletter. She hosts guides. I'm not sure the right word. She is a workshop instructor. So her trips are called treks. So if that's something that you're interested in and you're on the east side of the country, come visit her. She also does
Oh,
stuff outside of Pennsylvania. I always think Pennsylvania based, but she really has a couple of different locations that she's pretty familiar with. So if you're interested in that, reach out to her. She may be able to set something up for you. Next week, freelance writer Brian Scanlon joins us from California to share his presentation, I Want to Know Your Name, Classic Storytelling Techniques to Transform Your Art. And until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we will see you again soon.